Hi, I'm Jessica with Assurance Real Estate Acquisition, and today I have with me here Barbilee Hemmings. She's our expert right now with the health and wellness of the mind and body. So Barbilee, as an entrepreneur yourself, how do you take care of your health-wise, mind and body, since as an entrepreneur, usually you burn yourself out just trying to do everything all the time?
Right, because an entrepreneur is the CEO, the CFO, the secretary, the janitor, and everything, right? That's the definition of entrepreneur, right? So it's interesting because I've been doing this for, actually my first entrepreneurial gig was when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
And my brother was 16 at the time, 17 at the time. And they put an ad out for a newspaper delivery in my neighborhood.
Okay.
And I'm like, sweet, you can be 12 and get a newspaper route. So I decided to get a newspaper route. And my brother was like, you're too young and you're a girl, blah, blah, blah. And so I put in my application and everything. And the guy calls me and he says, well, with a name like Barbilee, it sounds like you're a girl. I'm like, totally a girl. He says, oh, you have to be 14.
Wow.
And I'm like, no, the ad says 12-year-old. And he says, no, sorry, if you were a boy, it could be 12, but as a girl, you have to be 14. So my first entrepreneurial experience was I went to my brother, who was 16 at the time, and I said, I want to use your name, your presence, I'll do the work, and I'll pay you a percentage of what I earn. And he's like, okay, what do I got to do? I said, you got to meet this guy, pretend you're going to take the route, I'll do the work, and I'll pay you a little bit, but I get the most of the money. He goes, okay. Who's not going to say yes? So as I understand now that's leverage. And that's what business owners, entrepreneurs, that's the number one thing, is what kind of resources are available to them.
Right. So
when I was 12, I had an older brother who could, pretend to take the route. Now you're not going to publish this somewhere where I'm going to get, thrown in jail for lying when I was 12 years old or anything. But that was the first time, when I started being an entrepreneur. And I watched my mom. My mom's an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And she's owned everything, like she's had vending companies. She's a taxi driver, right? She was a taxi driver pretty much my entire life. And I watched her work and work and work and work and work and never had time for the kids. And, my whole thinking is if you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to create a life for yourself, not steal yours away, right? So knowing this and having had some experiences and whatever, there's a course that I did quite a few years ago called the Millionaire Mind Intensive with Peak Potentials. Okay. So T. Harv Eker gets in the front of the room and he's talking about money mindset. And he talks about how if we take our all of our money, like let's say every dollar that comes to us, and it has a job, right? It's allocated a job. Sure. And so 50% goes here, 10% goes there, and so on. So he taught us this system that I started using as money management, and as my business, got to be an actual business and not just a hobby that I tried to get paid for, right? Because that's where most entrepreneurs are. I started looking at, okay, where's my time being spent? Because my business is out of my home, right? So you can imagine being in the home, and my office is in the home, and my children are in the home, and my dirty dishes are in the home, and my laundry's in the home, right? So there has to be some sort of balance, some sort of harmony. This whole, because, it's 8 o'clock at night, kids are awake, cadets, what am I going to do? I'll work, right? Because it's in the home, right? I walk 4 steps, I'm in my office. Maybe I should clean my office, maybe, and all this kind of stuff. So what I did is this system, this money management system that I learned, I started putting to task management. Now people say, oh, you mean time management. I says, I can't manage time. Have you ever tried to manage time?
We all have 24 hours.
Right, that's it. We have 24 hours. I don't have any more than you. It's how we use that time.
Sure.
We can never manage it. We can't slow it down. We can't speed it up. But we can manage our activities within that. So as an entrepreneur, I looked at how much time am I spending on my business? How much time am I spending on play? I asked you that question when we came in today. What do you do for fun, Jessica? Right? So it's this piece about keeping everything balanced, everything in harmony. So the system that I use is 50% of my time is spent on business. So let's say, for example, what time do you wake up in the morning?
I wake up at 5:30.
5:30, okay. So I like to sleep in. I get up at 7. okay? Because I work from home, so I don't have to drive anywhere for my business, right? And what time is your typical day end? Like you're kind of done, your brain is done.
10 p.m.
10 p.m., yeah, totally. Mine's sometimes done at like 9, right? But if I kind of look at and say, okay, so from 7 in the morning till 10 at night, right? This is my typical day, right? Because then I'll go, well, that gives me about 8 hours of sleep, because we should be sleeping 8 hours. And that's the first part of wellness, right? How to keep ourselves on track. So sleeping for 8 hours. So that other 16 hours of the day, what are we doing? Well, some entrepreneurs still have their job, right? They still have to go to their job, or they're building their business, right? In that other 16 hours. So how do you break down that 16 hours to stay healthy, both in your body and in your mind?
And what made you think about focusing so much on health? Like, what stopped you from being like all the other entrepreneurs who just kept working?
Well, when your body tells you to stop because it took you out because you're sick, you don't have a choice.
Okay, so you got to that point.
Yeah, I totally got burnt out.
Yeah,
now. Yeah. Well, I was teaching and I was running a business at the same time.
Okay.
Trying to be better.
Yeah, so you were like where most entrepreneurs are, where they're just burning themselves out.
Right.
So what's the transition that you had to go through to get to where you are now?
A lot of mindset change in the sense of, okay, what works for me and what doesn't, right? And I just learned and I just watched and I read a lot of books and I went to seminars and I spent a lot of money trying to learn, you know. But the bottom line is I had to figure out what works for me and in my family situation, right? I have two children. I'm married. So there's a whole other dynamic that's required there as well.
Okay. So if you were to take the key points out of the seminars and books you've read, what would be the 5 top things you would suggest for an entrepreneur who's starting to feel the burnout and how to prevent that from happening and start to live a healthier life while maintaining what they want in their business?
Yeah, there's not 5, there's 1.
Okay.
And number 1 is pay yourself first, right? Whether it's financially, physically, spiritually, you have to take care of yourself first. Okay. Nobody else can get from you when you're dry, right? If you imagine like those champagne fountains, you know, they do at weddings and stuff, where do they pour the champagne?
At the top.
At the top. That's me. I'm at the top of this pyramid, right? So how do I help everybody else? I make sure that I'm full, right? Then people can get from my reserves, whatever's overflowing, right? So energetically, right? How much energy does somebody have? Well, if I'm,
everybody else,
you know, everybody else around me goes, you know, we have a thing in my house. If mommy's not happy, nobody's happy. It's just kind of the way it works.
Yeah.
But it's the same in all situations, right? You tend to feed off the energy around you. So you have to also take care of yourself first. So pay yourself first. So take care of yourself, number 1.
In what way? Like physically, mentally, spiritually, any other ways?
Emotionally, all of it, yeah. So we have 4 modalities of the body, right? So to pay yourself first emotionally means, you know, actually look at yourself in the mirror and go, I like you. You know,
it's positive.
Yeah, totally. Right. So just, you know, just having that understanding that I am special, right? And others will see that if I see that.
Yeah, and this should obviously be done daily.
Oh, totally. And
hourly.
Sometimes hourly, depends, absolutely. You know, depends on what someone's lifestyle is like, especially if someone's still in their job, right, their job. And, you know, job just overbroke you. Like that. So, you know, if they're in this negative situation, I always say things like, well, you know, one of my topics that I talk about is take time to pee. Right? And, you know, you're like, I wonder what that means. and actually, it's really simple. It's taking that 5 times a day, you know, 4 or 5 times, because that's typically the time we spend in the bathroom. And we actually, as women, we sit down. Wipe the seat, right? We sit down, right? Take a breath. Don't, try and rush it, and oh my gosh, I gotta get back, and what if my phone rings, and don't be Facebooking. I read a statistic that 76% of Facebook stats are updated in the bathroom. Don't do that.
Wow.
Okay? Don't take your phone in there with you. It's a crazy stat. Actually, Facebook posted it. Anyway, but actually take the time to pee. When you're done, wash your hands. Turn on the water.
It's a given.
No, but it's not. And wash them, because some people just run the water, quick. I'm saying turn on the water, let it get warm, get the bubbles, play with the bubbles, right? Just like kids. Have you ever seen a kid play? Like it takes them 20 minutes to wash their hands, right? That's why they're so happy, because they've taken that time, So play with the bubbles. And if you have any worries or concerns or something bothering you, pop the bubbles. Go, that one's done. That one's done. Whatever. Sing in the bathroom. It's got great acoustics. Yeah, can you imagine?
There are obviously many
Right.
ways to take care of yourself emotionally in that sense.
Yeah.
So basically it's just taking time out of your day, rest up, don't think about anything, leave your phone away, and just look at yourself and tell yourself how awesome you are, right?
Well, yes, and surround yourself by other people who tell you you're awesome. But mean it. Don't
Always
pay
nice.
them to do it. Not the ones that you pay to do it. The ones that do it willingly, right? So friends, family, like these people that you actually like to hang out with. And sometimes it's not family, I'm just saying. But that's why we get to choose our friends. But it's, having that support system. So that also feeds you emotionally. And that also falls into the spiritual aspect.
Okay.
Because if you find a spiritual community of like-minded that, kind of have the same beliefs as you or have the same basic understanding, then you go, okay, so these people I can feed off of as well.
Okay.
Because now we can have real conversations, right? And it's not just going and listening to something and leaving, but it's actually being engaged in a community.
Okay.
So that's to feed yourself spiritually as well.
Okay, so for emotional, it's to have positive affirmation, surround yourself with supportive people. And then for the spiritual side, it's surrounding yourself in a community that's thinks the same as you.
Yeah,
do
like-minded.
spiritual.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next one was physically.
Yeah. So feeding your body. Okay, number one. We are raised from day one, and you've heard it, and finish my sentence, breakfast is the,
Most important meal of the day.
okay, and how many people skip breakfast?
Many people. Too
Okay,
many.
or wait, maybe it's even worse because they line up in one of those drive-throughs where they order what I consider crap, C-R-A-P, caffeine, refined sugars, additives, and preservatives, right? Doesn't matter what comes through the window, it's all crap. And they do that thinking that, well, at least I did that.
Okay.
And what they don't realize is it's worse for their body than skipping some days, some of the stuff that they're putting in. But definitely feeding the body first, and exercise. And exercise doesn't mean going to the gym and pumping iron and sweating and, whatever. That's really icky gross to me because I don't like germs. No, I don't like the germs in there. And people, they take the little cloths and they don't really wipe it down. And then they use the same cloth on each piece of equipment. To me, it's not a good, anyways, that's just me. But it doesn't mean exercise isn't always pumping iron or running a marathon. Exercise can be cleaning your house, right? Vacuuming, playing with the kids, doing something on the Wii, whatever, going for a walk.
Basically just being physically active.
Just move.
Just get off the couch and do something.
Just
Even
move.
if it's just simply walking around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been sitting next to one of the things that I do is when I work at home, right, and I know I've got like 4 or 5 hours that I'm working, so I'll set my timer, and every 45 minutes, I take a 15-minute break.
Okay, and what
Right?
do you do during that 15 minutes?
Whatever, I leave my office, so I go and do something. Sometimes it's, I recently, because I haven't had a lot to do, outside of my office kind of things, and keep my house pretty clean, is I play on the Wii.
Okay.
I'll put on a couple songs on the dance, or I'll do a couple of yoga things. I really like the hula hoop.
Okay.
The super hula hoop, yeah. And that's good, and I'm starting to be noticed. Just saying. But it's again, it doesn't have to be huge and structured, and we were just talking, we just came from the book club, and we were just talking about it doesn't have to always be a checklist of everything to do.
Yeah, it's just whatever
right?
you feel
just
like.
do something that feels good. Back in the 60s, if it feels good, do it.
Okay.
Right? Same idea.
That's before my time.
Yeah, mine too, but you've heard the expression.
So You said for a given hour, 45 minutes you work, 15 minutes you take a break.
Yeah.
Lots of entrepreneurs don't think that way because they're like, well, that's 15 minutes that I could be doing something. Do
Right.
you actually find that you're more energized and more productive after that?
Totally. Henry Ford, wasn't it him who sat in his office one day every week in complete darkness to just think?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure it was either him or, yeah, I'm getting it from the audience, I'm getting a yes. But it's because it's important to think,
Yes.
right? And if we're so busy, I prefer the term blissfully productive, but when we're busy and our mind is constantly going, we need to stop and think.
Right.
So first off, turn off the radio in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Get up, people say, oh, but I can make it my moving university. I can learn while I'm in the car. That's great too, but what about just quiet? Do you know anybody who has ever said, I've had my best ideas in the shower?
Many people actually.
And why is that?
Probably because they're not thinking about anything else.
Because it's quiet and they're doing nothing else. It's a form of meditation. So their mind is actually giving them a chance. So when I do something like the Wii, I don't have to think about how to hula hoop. The dance mat I have to think about because I'm still trying to beat my child in the top score. But just doing things like going for a walk. I don't have to be listening to something positive, or it's just being and thinking and just allowing the thoughts to come. I'm all about meditation too. So.
Okay. And the last one we mentioned was mentally. What would you do for that? I know it all kind of ties in, but is there something specific that you would say for the mental side?
Knowing where you're at, right? So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, there's something going on.
Okay.
Right? And it means I haven't taken the physical or the spiritual or the emotional, right? That's when the mental comes into place. Unless, somebody literally has a chemical imbalance, but typically most people don't. When they're feeling mentally overwhelmed, it's because they've forgotten about the other three. Because they haven't stopped to exercise, they're not feeding their body right. Because that's when the brain is the last thing to slow down.
Okay. So that's the sign of when you are actually getting to the burnout stage.
Yeah.
So once you get there, okay, let's take care of the first three things: spiritual, emotional, and physical.
Yeah.
And then everything will be starting to become okay.
Yeah, because, so in your car, you don't put gas in it, it doesn't go.
Yeah.
That's the mechanics of the car.
Okay.
We cannot put, quote unquote, gas in our body. So if we're not exercising, we're not filling our spiritual tank or our food, whatever, it'll still go. We'll still push it. But as soon as we have that mental block, that's it. Mm-hmm. That's when it stops. That's when the brain shuts down.
Okay.
Right? So if we keep those four things, I always focus like it's like this, the tire with the four spokes, and the four sections. And if one's flat, you're going da-dunk, da-dunk, da-dunk. You're not getting very far.
Yeah.
But if you want a nice smooth ride, focus on everything completely.
Okay.
And that's what I love about the like I said, the task management system, is it shows me and it keeps me focused. Because sometimes as an entrepreneur, we don't take time to play, right? Because we think we should be doing this, or we could be doing this, right? So if I know that out of my week, let's say, that I have 110 hours, right? So if I look at X amount of hours that I'm awake, I have 110 hours. So 55 of those hours are meant for work. That's my work time. That's my necessity time. Yeah. So around work, around the house, whatever I have to do. Anything more than that, I'm going to start to burn out, right? Then you get to look at, well, what do I do with the rest of the time?
And the limit would change per person too, right?
No. The values stay the same, but depending on someone's timing, especially new entrepreneurs, because they're trying to do different, be everything all at the same time. So the 5 other categories are, pay yourself first, right? So what we call financial freedom. Long-term savings for spending. This means what are you saving up in your body to use, right, to be spent. There's education, there's play, and there's give. So each of those, in a 110-hour week would get 5.5 hours. So what are you doing for 5.5 hours to play every week? And most entrepreneurs go, every week? I don't even get that in a month. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
So you have to be creative, right? Because maybe education is taking a class, right? Maybe you want to, brush up on real estate. So someone comes to town, you want to do something, or it's a seminar, or some new mortgage, whatever. Well, maybe you really, really, really like that, and you enjoy going and networking with other people and hanging out and getting a full day of just learning, well, you can combine your education with your play, right? So then when you have a little more, hours, more time for your necessities, right? Or maybe it's investing in your financial future, right? It's investing in your future, so you've taken a little bit of time from your paying yourself first, because you feel good when you go to those.
Okay.
So it's just a way of looking at everything as a whole, because our bodies are not individual compartments. It's a holistic unit, you know?
So you mentioned that entrepreneurs, usually when they look at the 5 hours a week of play, they're like, oh my God, I don't even have that in a month. Or some of them even think, I don't even know what I do for fun.
Right.
What would you suggest they could do to kind of find out what's fun for them? Because obviously it's different for everyone, but do you have pointers for how they can find that?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you have to kind of know yourself, right? So I ask, and I ask this of my people in my team, and I'll say, if you could do anything today, what would you do? If money was no object, like what would you do? Okay. And typically it's not, I'd love to travel around the world. Typically it's not that answer. It's like,
simple.
It's like, yeah, you know what? I would just love to read a book today. Or I would just love to go and, be with the horses today. Or, I'd love, what I'd really love? I'd love to go to a dog show. Somebody told me that the other day. I was like, I don't even know about that. Actually, I do. I said, I know somebody in church. I'll hook you up, She doesn't have a dog, but she loves agility. I was like, great. So it's just a point of finding out something that makes you feel good.
Okay.
And then training yourself not to feel guilty when you do it.
Okay, and how do you train yourself to do that?
You just do.
So
you just go and do it, and then you beat yourself up about it, and then you have to train yourself not to, and then you go and do it again.
Okay, so the more you do it,
right.
then the easier
it becomes easier. It's like stretching a muscle, right? If you're not used to having fun, you're not going to have fun, because you don't know how, right? If you're not used to doing something, once a month, and all of a sudden you start doing it, you're like, oh, I'll start next month.
Yeah.
No, you just have to start. That's right. Yeah. And then it's great also if you have an accountability partner or a coach, right? Somebody who is going to hold you accountable and say, hey, Jess, you said you're going to do this week. What'd you do for fun? Jess goes, well, next week I'll double up. Trust me.
Yeah.
And it's,
And you just keep dragging out.
Right. And the only person that suffers is you.
Mm-hmm.
And then by default, that champagne glass has a crack in it.
Okay.
And then nothing else gets served because it doesn't fill up.
Okay. So you said the key question is, if you weren't limited by money or time, what would you do right now?
Yeah. And people are simple. We really are a simple creature. We don't have big, grandiose plans or ideas. Like we have dreams. But really when it comes down to it, I do an exercise with people about, so imagine, that you have all the money in the world, all the time in the world. What would you do? Where would you go? Who would you go with? Or what would you do? Who would you be with? So write it down. And then, now you have 5 years to live. Right? Your doctor gave you a diagnosis. So now, where would you go? Who would you do it with? What would you do kind of thing. And then, the doctor called back. You're down to 6 months. Where'd you go? What would you do? Who would you be with? Kind of thing.
Okay.
And then the very last question is, you're going to die tomorrow.
Same questions.
Okay. And inevitably with everybody, it comes down to the same core value. There's somebody they want to be with and just be with and not do anything really of anything significant.
Right.
It's just, how do I spend the time with that person?
Okay.
And that's always the last thing that people do.
Okay.
Yet it's most important.
So with that exercise, you find out what your own core values are. So everything should be built around that.
Totally. Totally. That's your champagne glass. That's what's going to feed you. For me, it's teaching. Okay. So I went into the teaching career thinking that was going to do it.
Yeah.
That didn't do it. Made me sick, right? Teaching did make me sick. The whole stress I put on my life made me sick around it. Mm-hmm. But I only knew teaching in the classroom. I didn't know that I could be teaching outside of the classroom. I didn't know that existed. Until now, right? So even when I left teaching, I went into, the seminar world, right? And I started working with people who did seminars, right? Peak Potentials training. And I thought, this is what I want to do. This is so cool. And then I got so burned out doing that because I was just, it wasn't my thing.
Okay.
And that's what entrepreneurs focus on is what's your thing? Why are you doing what you're doing? And if the answer is because I can do it better than my boss can, then you're in the wrong business.
Okay, so that's also a key question to ask. Why are you doing what you do?
Totally.
And the answer should be surrounded around your core values,
Yeah.
then, right?
Right. Because that feeds you, right? I was explaining about, I had a conversation on Friday, oh, you're so busy. Well, I'm not. Because everything that I do, I love to do. It feeds me. It does not drain me. I don't go, oh, I have to go to the book club today. Right? Because if I did, I'd call up and go, I'm not coming to book club. Wait, I run book club. I'm still not coming. Right? And that's the thing is I wasn't in tune with my body before, and I pushed it. And it took me out. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that now. And I can see it in others, and I can help, but all I can do is teach. Right? I can't be it for them. So for entrepreneurs looking at the opportunity to not burn themselves out, they have to look inside first and say, why am I doing this? What is about this that gives me, why do I get out of bed in the morning? Because if it's for a paycheck, it's the wrong reason to get out of bed. Now I'm not saying don't get out of bed, but entrepreneurship, people tell you the definition is solving a problem for a profit. Right? But if you're going to go into business for yourself, I think that's Robert Kiyosaki's definition, right? When we go into business for ourselves, sometimes I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs because they said, oh, I can do it better than my boss, and then not like it, but then they're stuck in it. They feel, well, I've put so much time and energy, I'll just ride it out. And again,
it's just damaging.
That's right. And it's not serving the individual. It's not that top champagne glass.
Okay. So on top of taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, would you just suggest taking maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, just sitting there, reflecting, thinking about what you want from life?
Take time to pee.
I guess
it just comes back. But here's the thing. It's about feeding whatever it is you need, okay? So I had a great teacher one time. I was talking to the coach, and I said, but this is really bothering me. And they're like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to you? I said, like a 10. They said, great, scheduling time on Wednesday from 3 to 4 to worry about this, and let it go for now. And see, you laugh, right? Because I laughed too. And he says, well, if it's not important enough to schedule in, it's not important enough to worry about, right? Just allow it to figure itself out, or give it the time that it deserves, kind of thing. And that's to me, that's the thing is, what am I trying to do every day, all day, or who am I trying to be? That's might be a better question.
If somebody wanted to get a hold of you to ask you some more questions about how they can take care of themselves before burning out, how can they reach you?
Ooh, askbarbilee.com.
Okay, and just in case people don't know, how do you write your name?
Okay, A-S-K, Barbilee, BARBILEE.com. Okay. And that'll take right to my website.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for being here and answering some questions today. It's really wonderful hearing you speak, and the knowledge that you have is very valuable to us.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.